Life is an array of events that shape us the way we are. We are born with complete innocence, a blank slate, tabula rasa, honest, unpretentious, and no preconceived notions of the world around us. And as we grow older, we are shaped by the events, experiences. As a teen, we experiment, make mistakes, and experience our first true love. By the time we reach our 20s, we are ready to spread our wings, move out of the house, get on our own. We finally get to understand how the real world works. And to friggin' party, baby! Welcome everyone to episode 21 of the Automotive History series, where we're going to take a closer look at the crazy years of Volkswagen at the start of the 21st century. What moved a company that at one point was all about anti-establishment and unpretentiousness into making one crazy car after another? Let's find out. The story about the origins of Volkswagen, or really the Beetle, is an exhaustive one that has been covered numerous times, and no, I'm not going to bore you with my version of it. Still, for those that have been living under a rock, the Volkswagen Type 1, lovingly nicknamed the Beetle, was Hitler's vision of mass motoring for the people. And that's where the name comes from. Volks means people and Wagen means car. The people's car. A car capable of reaching Reichsautobahn speeds. It was the mid-century incarnation of the Ford Model T. Basic motoring done right. Cheap to own, cheap to run, cheap to fix. For many, a first car. For others, a great second car, or otherwise a symbol of counterculture. With some 15 million Beetles sold around 1970, saying the Beetle is a success is somewhat of an understatement. The VW Beetle was here to stay, right? Well, in some countries it did. The very last Beetle rolled off the assembly line in Mexico on July 30, 2003. But by the 70s, Volkswagen realized that the Beetle is great and all, but they are selling a car that was over 30 years old by then and became increasingly harder to sell if they also wanted to comply with the new rules and regulations regarding safety and emissions yada 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 malaise era that were coming up in the 70s and the 80s. And although Volkswagen offered the Type 3 alongside the Beetle, it was time for a worthy replacement. I present you the Volkswagen Golf of 1974, the next step in Volkswagen's idea of basic motoring, this time an angular-shaped hatchback. In the 80s and the 90s, Volkswagen felt a bit more confident and dared to step into the performance field with cars like the Scirocco and the Corrado. But they were eventually discontinued, and by the late 90s, VW was back again selling generic, normal, safe, reliable, and perfectly fine cars. Or so they thought. Introducing Ferdinand Piëch. Ferdinand, a grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, just breathes all things Volkswagen. I couldn't find the details, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was created and conceived in the back of a Beetle. He started at Porsche, moved to Audi, made a premium brand out of it, and later on became the Aufsichtsratsvorsitzender of Volkswagen in 2002, but before that he was already Vorstandsvorsitzender of Volkswagen in the 90s. He was the long-lost German son of Henry Ford, a much-respected individual within the automotive world. Almost everything he touched turned into gold. Almost. Piëch had a plan. Let's call it Piëch's plan. He wanted Volkswagen to spread its wings within the automotive landscape. Volkswagen was no longer a one-car brand. It was going to be an automotive superpower, offering the best of the best in every conceivable market niche. In order to achieve this dream, Piëch's plan consisted of two strategies. Number 1, diversifying into new market segments, and number 2, buying brands. Let's start with the latter. Volkswagen, until then only having premium brand Audi, wanted to move into the ultra-luxury car field by buying the Rolls-Royce and Bentley luxury twins. Or, as it turns out, Volkswagen only bought Rolls-Royce's hood ornament and waterfall grille. The rest of the car, or really the name and logo, were in the hands of BMW through a joint venture. Uh-oh. Well, don't you worry, they eventually worked out a deal. BMW was going to be the new owner of Rolls-Royce, and VW could keep Bentley. A win-win for all. But that's luxury, as Volkswagen then proceeds to once again enter the performance field. Sure, they had some sporty Audis, and Porsche made some impressive models, but VW did not have a direct competitor to the all-out in-your-face horsepower orgy hypercars like the McLarens and Paganis. So, let's buy a Lamborghini and put it under the watchful eye of Audi. But that wasn't enough, as the rather pedestrian-looking Lamborghini only featured a homely 10 or 12-cylinder engine. We have to take this one step further. So, in addition, VW bought the rights of Bugatti. Bugatti is a French company that almost all throughout its existence made ultra-prestige cars. They made a name for themselves in the 1930s with cars like the Bugatti Royale, but by the later 90s, not counting the EB110, Bugatti was struggling, and Wolfsburg arrived just in time to revive the name. And reviving, they did. Introducing the Bugatti Veyron. This is a technical marvel. This is a car that does not rival other hypercars. This is a car that created an entire league of its own. And guess what? It only competes with itself. The magic of the Veyron can be found in its engine bay. An 8-liter W16 engine with 4 turbos is what makes this car go from 0 to 100 in less than 3 seconds with 1,000 horsepower to go along with it. This engine is the ultimate result and definition of German engineering. And it's the layout. Not inline, not V, no, it's W. An engine setup specifically designed by Volkswagen for Bugatti. And on top of that, it's a 16-cylinder, the only production car currently in the world to have a 16-cylinder. Performance and prestige caught in a metal shape that is this car. Truly marvelous. Now, hypercars are the ones that generate publicity, but it's your average middle-class model that generates revenue. And that brings me to the other strategy, expanding the lineup and diversifying into new markets. By now, VW had a presence in the luxury car market with Bentley, but also wanted to slowly push VW and Audi into a more premium market. Over at Audi, this process already took place in the 80s. You might not believe this, but Audi once was a budget-oriented marque, but managed to become a premium or even a luxury brand by the 90s, thanks to Pierre. But the idea was that Volkswagen was going down this way all throughout the zeros. From middle class to more upper class or even premium. The void it would leave behind would then be filled by Seat and Skoda, and sure enough, even to this day, cars like the Skoda Superb offer Mercedes S-Class level of legroom for the Skoda price. VW went full steam ahead into the zeros by vastly expanding their model range, entering the premium luxury car market. And the most well-known example is the Volkswagen Phaeton. The Phaeton was going to be the top dog, rivaling the cars like the Mercedes S-Class, the BMW 7 Series, and even its own Audi A8. Ferdinand, feeling like the automotive equivalent of Moses, came down the mountain of car development with a list of 10 commandments for the Phaeton. These commandments were ludicrous. One of them is this: the car should be able to be driven 300 kilometers an hour continuously all day with an outside temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, while inside maintaining a temperature of 22 degrees Celsius. This is a very complicated way of saying don't overheat. And let's face it, when was the last time you had to cross the Sahara Desert in record time, huh? Engines were also ludicrous, more on that in a moment, because the largest engine available was a 6-liter W12 motor. But can you please point out to me what is so Volks about a wagon with a 12-cylinder engine? And herein lies the problem. The Phaeton, or should I say Phailton, how do I come up with these? Failed horribly. Why? This is the ultimate dream car. Unpretentious, ultra luxurious. You pay for what you get. What you see is what you get. It's this. This round piece of metal with 2 letters on it. Consumers want to be fooled. Consumers want to pay for the name and what it supposedly represents. What made Audi great is what made the Phaeton fail. It's the name. the brand. I always like to joke that if you want a new Audi, you first pay about $5,000 per chrome ring in the grille, and from there you start to actually pay from the car and what's in it. Somehow Audi managed to present itself as a luxury brand, but at one point in history was anything but. But the Veyron? That's just an expensive Volkswagen, and you really didn't want to be seen breaking the bank by buying a $70,000 Volkswagen. An Audi? Sure, but a Volkswagen? Nah. I guess it's a great example of a great car, wrong crowd. But the Veyron wasn't alone. Just to name a few other models. Volkswagen celebrated the popular retro wave with the new Beetle. This time not an unpretentious simple car, but an overpriced pretentious fashion item based on the Golf. Now that I'm talking about the Golf, the car received numerous trim and body versions like the Golf Plus, the R32 and EOS, a separate model and convertible but based on the Golf. The regular Passat received a sleek looking cousin, the CC, and for the longest time VW didn't like SUVs but finally gave in with a big ass Touareg and later on the Tiguan, not to mention the current wave of SUVs coming in. But let's get back. Oh yeah, engines. Because most of these cars I just mentioned came with an interesting list of engines. You didn't need to save up for a Bugatti or a Veyron to get some fun. The Golf, for instance, could be had with the V5 engine. Let that sink. V5. When I think of a V-layout engine, I think of even numbered amount of cylinders, but oh no, not if you put those crazy German engineers to work. By offsetting the cylinders, engine layouts like the V5, or better known as the VR5, suddenly were possible. On top of that, you could also get a V6 in your Golf. A car that is synonymous for 4-cylinder engines, could be had with a V6. And then you had the Touareg. A big car, so surely it needs some power, right? Heck yeah, of course you could get the W12 motor, but how about a 5-liter V10 turbo diesel instead? Now I thought only Americans or Formula 1 racing teams shoved engines like this in their cars, but Volkswagen did it as well. And that brings me to the diesel era. Volkswagen was convinced that diesel was not the fuel of the devil, which resulted in smelly, noisy and underpowered cars. They went all in on diesel development and wanted to show the world that diesel would be a competitive competitor to regular fuel, and in addition, extremely fuel efficient. The foundations were laid in the very late 90s with the ambitious Audi A2. This all-aluminum car was designed to have a drag coefficient of just 0.25. In comparison, today's Tesla has a drag coefficient of 0.24. But that was the lowest of any production car at the time. Coupled to a lightweight body and frame, and with the right diesel engine, the car could achieve a fuel consumption of about 3 liters per 100 kilometers, or roughly 80 miles per gallon. Now, the Audi A2 somewhat failed as it was a bit radical and weirdly shaped just to achieve these numbers. This was a small Audi, and not a cheap Audi, but people had a hard time understanding that concept. But the relationship between Volkswagen, diesel and fuel efficiency seeped through almost all of its models. Even a lowly VW Lupo, the smallest economy car offering at the time, could be ordered with a choice of 3 different diesel engines. The holy grail of Volkswagen diesel cars came around in 2011 as the Volkswagen XL1. The XL1 can be best described as a 2-person diesel-powered plug-in hybrid with a 1-liter 2-cylinder engine on board, achieving a magical fuel efficiency of just 1 liter of fuel per 100 kilometers or 310 miles per gallon. This is a design exercise on wheels. Much like the Audi A2, it's a weird-looking and rather impractical car. I mean, it's like a concept car that rolled into the dealership. But concept car looks or not, the car was officially on sale, and some 250 models were produced. This car is truly a symbol of a company that is just throwing money around. They achieve great things as a concept car, but to go the extra step and take the effort to actually produce a bunch of them, well, that's some costly exercise right there. And see, this is probably the bottom line of this video. What I mean is this. At this point, VW tries to excel at everything, from ultimate luxury to ultimate power to ultimate fuel efficiency and everything in between. At its height, Volkswagen alone offered you some 18 models in their showrooms as of 2015. This surely couldn't keep going forever, right? Morning. I'm the EPA and this is my partner ICCT. Your neighbors complained about a smelly car with big black smoke coming out of the exhaust. Mind if we take a look at your car? Yeah, sure. It's in the garage. Follow me. Alright, let me see. Aha! What's this? I thought you only sold clean diesels. This car is 40 times more harmful than claimed and showed during our testing cycle. Oh, are you sure? Okay, huh? That's weird. Dieselgate was born. What happened? Well, as soon as Volkswagen had a new model that was ready for testing, before hitting the open road, they added a little device, aka defeat device, in the cars that could detect that they were being tested. When the testing procedure took place, the device would then make sure that the car would meet the emission standards, but only during testing. After testing, it would once again switch back to its normal, unlawful levels of pollution. At first, Volkswagen accused the testing agencies for its filthy business practices, claiming that the standards were too strict to meet, meaning that they have to throw all of their efforts for making diesel engines away. Is that the smell of diesel or the smell of blood? As soon as the news came out, every environmental agency and their mother accused or sued Volkswagen for doing this. And you know what? Let's destroy the image of diesel while we're at it. Cancel culture at its finest. With countless recalls, lawsuits, bad press, and plummeting stocks, Volkswagen was paying a heavy price for its diesel shenanigans. Oh, I guess not. The effect that the Dieselgate ordeal caused was a joke to VW. The year of the scandal, 2015, they only sold 2% less cars than the year before. By 2018, they were back at the same level as before. In the US, that is. In Europe, we didn't even give a crap about the scandal altogether, and we just kept on buying them like there was no tomorrow, or Dieselgate. Because it's Volkswagen. Look at it. You want to buy it. They know you want to buy it. It's a perfectly boring and perfectly fine car. Volkswagen used the scandal as a way to say, sorry, we made some mistakes and we're going to make it right by selling EVs. These cars don't run on diesel right and they can't fail any emission tests either. Or are we getting a range gate in the near future where VW is getting caught promising a better range than what is possible? I don't know. What I do know is this. The much anticipated ID.3 was, even according to Volkswagen, the next step in the Beetle lineage. Beetle, Golf, ID.3. Perfect electric range for a perfect price. Now, I drove the car, and I found it underwhelming. The interior features peculiar design choices atypical to Volkswagen. Is this a worthy replacement of the Golf? Is this what all the fuss is about? But maybe this is Volkswagen. Normal and perfectly fine, just as it has always been.